All right, welcome into Zero Technique Podcast presents Back Sports Page Sunday Morning Fantasy. I am your co-host Ryan Stern. Join with me, Marthony Sanders, and hey, this is a week about me versus you. Not only is it your Falcons versus my Giants, but it's also me versus you in the Back Sports Page Fantasy Football League, and
Right.
my team is just devastated by injuries. So I'll be lucky to come out of this one ahead.
We'll see, man. I don't know. I felt like the last 2 weeks my team put up some pretty good numbers, but somehow, some way, someone gets lucky and one of their guys goes off, and I will look back and I'm like, dang, that's another loss. What's
Yeah,
going on?
yeah. Well, fantasy is such a fickle friend. So,
Right.
all right. So we have a bunch of different situations that we're going to get into between running back situations, a couple wide receiver situations. Then we'll do our studs, and sleepers. As always, if you have any lineup questions, shoot them in the comments, and we will answer them live on air. So let's start off with a couple running back situations. And the biggest one right now is the one in San Francisco, because it looks like we're going to have our third consecutive week with a different starting running back there. Elijah Mitchell is doubtful. Now, this is also a Sunday night game. So if you're holding out hope that Elijah Mitchell plays, you need to have a backup option, whether it be a Trey Sermon to get the start there, or you have to have some sort of backup option with that Monday night game, whether it be a Tony Pollard, who the way Tony Pollard has looked, you may want
That might not be yeah. You
to
might want to go
flex
ahead and
him
play
anyway.
him. Yeah, it might be the best bet to probably go ahead and flex in TP for sure, just because of how many touches he's gotten. His volume is definitely
Yeah, and what we've seen in the past is that Tony Pollard has been one of those cleanup guys. He's been one of the guys that gets the end of game touches, the one that they don't want Zeke. They're trying to make sure that Zeke isn't getting hurt on. But now he's getting important carries. He's getting important touches, and more importantly for fantasy, he's seeing more targets out of the backfield than Zeke. And that was part of what made Zeke so valuable over the last 2 years, was his target number just increased each year.
yeah, it's a very sticky situation out there for sure, especially if you're in the PPR leagues. The way that TP gets targeted out of the backfield with catches, man, if
Yeah.
I say if you already have him, just don't even worry about trying to grab him one of those 49ers guys. But I mean, if not, if you can, if he's still out there, I would definitely probably go with Trey Sermon, just because he's kind of been talked about really out there since probably since training camp and OTAs and everything like that. So if you don't, I'll probably go with one of those guys for sure.
Yeah, we saw Trey Sermon be a surprise inactive week one. He didn't factor much into the game in week two, and then he left with the concussion. So I was actually able to pick up in a couple of my leagues. Trey Sermon was dropped before anyone really knew what the status of Elijah Mitchell, because earlier in the week it seemed more optimistic that he would play this week. And just as the week progressed, we started to say, well, now there's a worse chance that Mitchell is playing. So, yeah, I was actually able to pick up Trey Sermon off the waiver wire because he was dropped in a couple leagues. So definitely make sure you're, again, the odds are that Trey Sermon is taken, but go check your waiver wire because there is a chance that he is out there. Next one that we should talk about is the Baltimore Ravens, and what seemed to be a couple weeks ago a 4 or 5 headed monster that we didn't know how to attack. It looks like it's down to 2. And yes, Devonta Freeman did have that long run, but he only had 2 carries in the game, and it was 41 yards or 31 yards, and then a -2.
Right.
He's just not being integrated, and it looks like it's down to Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray. If it were you, how are you ranking your confidence in each of the running backs?
It's pretty close, but me personally, I would still give the edge to Tyson Williams.
Yep.
The way that I know last week he probably cost some people some fantasy points with their fumble going into the end zone, and Duvernay picks it up. But obviously they trust him down up there in Baltimore. They're giving him the touches. He's going to split it with Latavius Murray, but I think I still have Tyson Williams slightly ahead of Murray.
Yeah, Tyson Williams also seems to be the guy that if they're looking for someone out of the backfield in terms of targets, it looks like those are going to go to Tyson Williams before they go to Latavius Murray. So if you are in any sort of PPR league, for me, it's definitely Tyson Williams. And the final situation that we need to talk about, and this is with your boys out there in Atlanta, and it's between Mike Davis and Cordarrelle Patterson. And Mike Davis still is getting the majority of the touches, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've been effective. The effective touches have come from Cordarrelle Patterson, of all people.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it here these first two games. You can kind of tell that they are trying to and wanting to get Mike Davis as much involved as they can, because obviously we saw last year what he did in Carolina and spell for Christian McCaffrey, what he's capable of. It's just not showing enough in the numbers there to fully believe that he can do it. And then the way that Cordarrelle Patterson has basically just been, almost anytime he's touched the ball, it's been pretty much those big like chunk plays, 10+ yard plays, explosive plays. After a while, you kind of start wondering, well, is he going to continue to keep getting these touches the way that he's getting? Like it's
and
their
he's
situation
also
is pretty bad too.
He's getting red zone touches, which is the most surprising thing, because to me, Mike Davis is one of your more prototypical red zone backs. But especially last week, it's those important touches are going to Patterson.
Yeah, him and Pitts were pretty much the reason that they stuck in that game for up until the fourth quarter last week with Tampa Bay. They were the two biggest weapons. I mean, Calvin really got going a little bit, but Patterson and Pitts is pretty much were the two big weapons last week that got it done for Atlanta as far as fantasy wise goes. So it is kind of strange that the fact that when they got down there in that red area that it was Patterson and not Davis. The build, the physicality that Mike Davis has, you would think that he can be the one to get down there and finish that in that red zone. But last week it was Patterson. I'm just interested to see what happens today against New York.
Yeah, and it's fine because you look at, especially if you're on certain platforms, they give you the rankings versus each position for the team. And to me, you look at any of the Atlanta running backs, and it looks like it's a juicy matchup against the Giants. If you take out that 70-yard run by Melvin Gordon in week 1, the Giants are actually holding running backs to under 3.3 yards per carry and only one other touchdown. It doesn't look as enticing a matchup for the running backs as the overall statistics would make you think it looks like. So I would probably avoid. I would fade Mike Davis this week. I would actually like Cordarrelle Patterson more, because I think the Giants struggle more with the pass catching guys than they do with the big bruisers.
Yeah, he's definitely either low stream or just fade away all the way completely.
All right, let us move on to some wide receiver situations, and the biggest one to me is out in Pittsburgh. Because we now have Deontay Johnson, who is out for at least this week. Or was he put on an IR yet? Or I didn't see that.
I didn't see anything saying about IR just yet, but I know he's out this week for sure.
Right. So now it's time for Juju and Chase Claypool to shine. But we have that pectoral injury from Big Ben Roethlisberger. Is this a week against Cincinnati that we can trust any of the Pittsburgh wide receivers?
I say no. Just because even last week against Las Vegas, which I thought maybe they would all have a pretty good game. They, especially Big Ben, they struggled mightily against the Raiders. So I'm not quite sure if I would put any of my trust in anybody, especially into the receiving core down there in Pittsburgh against Cincinnati today.
Yeah, the only I'm fading Chase as much as I love Chase Claypool. He's one of my favorite long-term prospects in the NFL. I'd probably fade him today. I would prefer Juju out of the two because I think he would be the one to run more underneath and shallow routes, at which we don't know what type of arm strength we're going to see out of Roethlisberger today. So it may just Juju is going to be the more ready for a yak type of play.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a Hail Mary type thing for me. I would look for other options, but in a PPR, you could do worse than Juju this week.
Yeah, that's true.
The next one, and this is a tough one for me because I like so many wide receivers from this core, but it's the Miami Dolphins. And Tua is now out. He is on IR, so he will be out for a couple weeks. And we have now Jalen Waddle, who has looked much better out of the gates. I thought he was actually going to be one of the wide receivers that was going to take a little bit more time to acclimate because of his health going into the season. But Jalen Waddle has looked great coming out of the blocks. Devontae Parker has been solid, and we do get to see the return of Will Fuller this week, but it's with Jacoby Brissett. Maybe in a tournament setting on DFS, would I look to play one of these guys? But in a season-long league, I don't think I can trust any of these wide receivers with Jacoby Brissett out there.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, I mean, he's decent. He's a solid backup that you can have.
Right. He's a really good backup, but he would be like the QB 33, 34. Like he would be, he's an upper echelon backup quarterback, but he's not quite starter. And we've seen enough reps from him to know that he can't be all that reliable.
Yeah. So I'm right there with you. I'm staying away from any of the Dolphins wide receiving core right now until they can get to it back.
And the last one that I want to get into is the Colts. And again, this is all tied into quarterback health. It looks like there's a chance that Carson Wentz is going to go. He sprained, and in true typical Carson Wentz fashion, he sprains both of his ankles. And even though he ended up going down in a matchup that I love Michael Pittman. I faded him all week last week because of the matchup against the Rams, and he balled out last week. If Carson Wentz is out there, I'm assuming that means his ankles are healthy enough to have what it takes for a quarterback's footwork to be well. Is Pittman an option for you today, or what about someone like a Pascal or Paris Campbell?
I think if you're not that deep at your wide receiving core, and you just have to end up playing one of those guys. Or if you don't have a Pittman and there's a Pascal out there that's still there, or a Paris Campbell, it's tough to say, but I would still maybe try to play him. It's low end for sure.
Right.
Not
It's a
much risk
juicy
in him.
matchup against a really
Yeah,
bad Tennessee defense.
yeah. So I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to even want to pick him, even if, or hard not to play him, even if Carson Wentz can't go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
just because of how bad.
If Carson Wentz isn't out there, I can't play any of them.
Yeah.
We heard this week that they were giving equal reps to Jacob Eason and Nick Hundley, who they signed fresh off the street, and now it looks like he's already competing with Jacob Eason for that backup job. But if Carson Wentz is out there, I would actually trust a Michael Pittman in this juicy matchup against Tennessee. Again, if you are tuning in, you have lineup questions, shoot them in the comments. We will answer them live on air. Now we will get into our studs, duds, and duds portion of the show, and let's open up with our studs. Who's your stud quarterback of the week?
Speaking of that matchup with the Colts and the Titans, I gave him a stud 2 weeks ago and he kind of let me down, but I'm gonna give him one more chance with Ryan Tannehill. Mainly just because of how bad the Colts defense have kind of looked these first two games. They had Russell Wilson and Matthew Stafford. They both scored at least 21 fantasy points. Tannehill really looked good last week against Seattle as well. I mean, he got robbed of a touchdown with the pass to Julio Jones, so that definitely would have been more points there. So I'm going for my stud of the week at quarterback. I'm going to try to go with Ryan Tannehill again, give him one more chance.
All right, so I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins in the matchup against Seattle. Seattle has they're middle of the road against the quarterbacks, and we know that the Vikings do like to establish the run. Unfortunately for them, it looks like that Dalvin Cook is going to be questionable at best. If he does play, I don't expect him to get the full workload of snaps out there. I think they're going to rely more on the passing game this week. And we've seen Kirk Cousins, he balls out when they need him to.
Yeah.
I have him in a 16-team league. What I did was I took a safe quarterback as my starter, someone like Cousins, and then I drafted a Trey Lance because I knew that upside towards the end of the season could be someone I could rely upon. Mm-hmm. But Kirk Cousins in a 16-team league is going to outperform his expectations preseason. Because I mean, I was the second to last person to draft the quarterback in that league. So I got him as the 15th quarterback off the board. And Kirk Cousins right now, with those weapons in Jefferson and Thielen, he's just going to outperform most weeks. All right. Who is your stud running back of the week?
Let's see. My stud running back, I'm going with Chase Edmonds. I mean, he hasn't gotten to the end zone yet, but he gets a good volume of touches, even though he still splits it with James Conner out there in Arizona. Obviously, he pairs well with Kyler Murray. And then, especially if you're in a PPR league, the way that he gets touches out of the backfield with catches, I like his matchup that he has today. So I'm going with Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, and James Conner has actually been the second least effective running back in the league in terms of yards per carry. He's just not the type of runner that I think has worked well with that type of system. I think as the next few weeks go on, we are going to see more of Chase Edmonds. My stud running back of the week is going to be Austin Eckler. I have him in every single DFS lineup this week. The Chiefs have not been good against those pass-catching running backs. Frank Clark is going to be out Chris Jones is questionable at best to clog up that middle for the Chiefs. So if he can't go, especially, I absolutely love Austin Eckler, and obviously you're playing him in your season-long leagues, but in DFS, I have him everywhere. Who you got at wide receiver?
Wide receiver on my stud for this week, I'm going with Mike Williams from the Chargers. He's had a great start to the season so far. And I think that that matchup between the Chiefs and the Chargers is going to be a shootout. And he seems to always have one of his best games against the Chiefs as well, just due to history. Even last year in Week 17, he had a pretty good game against them. I think he had about 6 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. So he's been playing lights out so far this season. I can see him continuing on doing that this game against the Chiefs.
It's fun because when he's out there, he's worth that 7th overall pick that they used in 2017. Right. It's just the fact that he's so physical and he goes up for every single ball. He needs to learn how to land because how many times have we seen Mike Williams go up and make a great catch and then land awkwardly and then he's out for a quarter or out for a game? If he could stay on the field for an extended period of time, that's going to be a dangerous offense. My stud wide receiver of the week is DK Metcalf. Obviously, the story of the first 2 weeks has been Tyler Lockett. Lockett's been, aside from Cooper Kupp, the most efficient wide receiver in the league in terms of getting open per route run. And Russell, he could have easily had 3 touchdowns week 1. He had already had 2, but Wilson decided he had 2 open options. Decided to go with Gerald Everett instead of Lockett at the end of that game. The story has been Tyler Lockett, which means I think that there is a good chance that he's going to receive that top coverage in terms of who Minnesota is going to cover. And DK Metcalf is just too good, too physical, too fast to be viewed as a number 2 target. So I really like DK this week. And who we got over at tight end? You got your tight end stud of the week?
Yeah. So my stud of the week this week, I'm gonna go with Tyler Higbee. I know last week he had a pretty bad week. It was pretty much a dud with just 1 catch for 8 yards. But once again, playing that Tampa Bay defense, who they've given up at least 10 points PPR wise to tight ends the first 2 games. Dawson Schultz, of course, had a great game, and Kyle Pitts even had a good game last week against them as far as fantasy points wise. I can see Tyler Higbee rebounding this week against the Buccaneers.
Yeah, my you just mentioned him. My tight end stud of the week is Kyle Pitts. We're starting to see him become that number 2 target that I think a lot of people were expecting him. It was kind of a quiet first week for Pitts, but that's because the entire offense just seemed out of sync against Philadelphia. I think the more he gets accustomed to that playbook, the more we're going to see out of Kyle Pitts. And the Giants they're not great against the tight ends. So I do think that we're going to see a lot out of Kyle Pitts this week. All right. Again, if you have lineup questions, shoot them in the comments. We will answer them live on air for you. All right. Time to get into our dud section. Who is your dud quarterback of the week?
My dud quarterback this week is going to be Baker Mayfield. I really do like Baker, but this week is just I don't think it's gonna be good for him. There's no Jarvis Landry. Odell Beckham is I think he's supposed to be playing
Yeah,
today. At
he
least they
is
did
playing.
today. Okay. But of course, we don't know where he is health wise, how rusty he may be, and you know, they're they're probably going to hand the ball off a lot more to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in this one. So it's really not more so that he can't produce; it's just that the lack of weapons and who they have in the backfield can do more damage to their opponent this week instead of maybe Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, Baker. What was going to be mine? I'll flip over to Taylor Heineke. Heineke was the big story last week, especially with his second half against the Giants. We saw that he a little bit of a gunslinger mentality. He looked a little timid in that first half, but then really started to let loose in the second half. But this Buffalo defense is for real.
Yeah,
The Washington offensive line has not been great. The Giants, excuse me, even though they weren't able to generate a bunch of sacks, they were able to generate a lot of QB pressures. And this is from a pass rush that has been non-existent for quite some time now. So I think that this Buffalo defense is going to be able to lock down on someone like Terry McLaurin on the outside, because they obviously we saw Taylor Heineke to focus in on McLaurin. McLaurin was his number one read on almost every single passing play. And I think Buffalo is going to understand that, and they're going to make other wide receivers beat them. So Taylor Heineke is going to be someone that I'm not going to be playing anywhere this week. All right, Dud running backs. Who you got?
Dud running back. I'm gonna go down in Jacksonville with James Robinson. Um, Although he got his touches increased from week 1 to week 2 last week. It's just the
Still
fact
only
that
14.
yeah, it's just that's not enough for a guy who a lot of people probably might have spent a first round or second round pick on. Maybe definitely went early in the draft at some point.
Yeah,
Um,
once Travis Etienne went down, his ADP skyrocketed.
yeah, so it's kind of you would have thought that obviously that James Robinson would get a lot of touches at a high volume, but it just hasn't happened yet. And on top of that, Arizona has played Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry the first 2 weeks. None of those guys got any type of rushing touchdowns on them. So it's just the matchup just doesn't bode well right now for James Robinson. So he's my dud of this week.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be a little bit obvious, and Dalvin Cook's going to be my dud of the week, because I do think that he's going to be active, and it's going to be so hard for someone to sit Dalvin Cook, especially if he's active, because you probably spent the number 2 or number 3 overall pick on a Dalvin Cook, and if he's active, you're going to want to play him. I just don't think that there's going to be enough volume for him this week. Uh, Again, you may not have better options, but if you have a starting option that has been on your bench, I would consider benching Dalvin Cook this week. All right, running wide receiver dud of the week. Who you got?
Going out in Vegas, and I'm going with Henry Ruggs the third. Um, he had a great week last week, which is great to see because obviously, Las Vegas spent the first round pick on him as well. And obviously we saw like how great he can be, but very inconsistent. Sometimes
Yep.
just doesn't even get targeted enough. I think this was the first time in his career that he got targeted more than 5 times in a game. And then I'm pretty sure he's going to be seeing Xavier Howard this week against Miami, and I don't know. I wouldn't want to touch him this week in this game. He had a great game last week, but I just can't see him repeating that same output against the Dolphins.
Yeah, you had the perfect word, and that's inconsistent, which is tough because I know that they want to get him integrated into the offense more. I mean, they took him ahead of Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. So they have to sort of explain themselves and the way you do that is to heavily target him. But we all know that the number one target in this offense is Darren Waller. I mean, what was that? 19 targets in week one against Baltimore. It was just absurd. And yeah, you're right. This is a very tough matchup against Miami. It's also a matchup that I can see being very low score because they're going up against a good defense, and this is going to be a Miami offense that I don't think a lot of people are expecting to put up a lot of points. So this may not be the type of game that Henry Ruggs would benefit from, a shootout type game. That's where you want to see Henry Ruggs fired off in your lineups.
Right.
My dud wide receiver of the week is going to be Mike Evans. Now, I know that we have seen Jalen Ramsey not necessarily stick to one particular player. We have seen him leak into the slot a bunch of times. But to me, this is the type of matchup, especially without Antonio Brown, that they're going to want to take away that big physical guy. And that's who Jalen Ramsey is. He can take away that big physical guy better than anyone else in the league. I think they're going to use him on an island against Evans, use double teams on someone like a Chris Godwin. So Mike Evans is going to be my wide receiver fade of the week. And now the easiest portion of the show is the tight end dud of the week.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that Raiders Dolphins matchup and going with Mike Kaseki.
Uh-huh.
I mean, even back in week one, he had no catches against New England. Had three catches last week against Buffalo, but it's the wide receiving core they have down there. This might be a Myles Gaskin type of game. Maybe he might get the shine for us fantasy wise for us Miami, but obviously with Jacoby Brissett and their quarterback and that Raiders defense is legit. So
I mean, they really held Lamar Jackson, and I have to. I heard this one story about the Raiders defense, and someone was playing Lamar Jackson on that final drive of the game, or in the fourth quarter, week one against with Baltimore and the Raiders, had taken a 1-point lead as the Ravens kicked the field goal to send it into overtime. So he had taken the lead. And then the Raiders go down, and in overtime they score. So and everyone's all right. The Raiders scored. The Raiders scored. The game is over. They get shut down at who was it? Brian Edwards, I think it was. They ruled him down at the half-yard line. He gets moved back, and then they fumble the ball. So now Baltimore has the ball, and Lamar Jackson fumbles. So if the kick doesn't go through the uprights to send it into overtime, if the game is over against that long touchdown to Brian Edwards, if the Raiders don't fumble the ball, he wins the game. But because all of those things happen, and on the first play, Lamar Jackson fumbled a -2, and he ends up losing by less than a point.
Pain.
Oh my! And then I saw one guy, and it wasn't because of any one particular play, but he had posted from his 3 lineups, from his 3 season-long matchups, he lost all 3 by less than a point. Fantasy. She's a dirty hoe sometimes.
Man.
All right. So my tight end dud of the week, and this is going to go back to my Taylor Heineke. It's going to be Logan Thomas. I don't know what to expect from this Washington offense. I can see this being another one of those low-scoring games. This may be tough to get out of the 30s in terms of total points, the way both of these defenses have been playing. And I think at times struggling on offense. We haven't seen that explosive Buffalo offense. I think if we had seen what we saw towards the end of last year from Buffalo, where they were just putting up the points, it would be a lot tougher for that defense to keep up. But because all of these games so far have been low scoring, they've been a lot of trying to establish the run, they've been able to play to their strength. So I'm going to fade Logan Thomas this week. All right. And now we're on to sleepers. Sleeper quarterback of the week. Who you got?
My sleeper quarterback for the week, I'm going with Teddy. Now at home, albeit of course, it is against the Jets. But I like him as, if you have league where you play 2 quarterbacks, I can see him as a low end starter B2, or if you're just not trusting any of your say if you might have a Carson Wentz and you're not sure he's going to play, and Teddy Bridgewater is just left with your other quarterback, or he's still out there somewhere, I can see him still having a pretty decent game against the Jets.
See, it's funny because I'm actually playing.
It may not be, of course, 25, 26 points, but
yeah, so I'm actually playing Teddy Bridgewater in 2 different Superflex leagues. One of them, I'm playing him over Carson Wentz. So it's funny that you use that exact situation. And one of them, I'm playing him over Trevor Lawrence. That Arizona defense has really been playing well. And so I'm concerned with how effective Trevor Lawrence is going to be this week. Obviously, we've seen that the 2 players who are leading the NFL in interceptions so far are Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the 2021 draft. So yeah, so I'm right there with you. I really like Teddy Bridgewater this week. I'm going to go, and I'll actually give you 2 sleepers of the week, because these are the 2 quarterbacks I have in almost all of my DFS lineups. The first one is Justin Fields. He's making his first start. I just think that his baseline is so safe because of his ability to rush the ball. And we're seeing Darnell Mooney is healthy. He needs to catch a ball, though. And I think this is a big breakout week for Allen Robinson. I really do think that this is a good Justin Fields week. And then same thing, I think with the rushing upside, I'm going to go with the number 1 running back for the New York Giants, and that's Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones right now has the 3rd most amount of rushing yards by quarterbacks in the league. He's got the 19th most amount of rushing backs of anybody. Daniel Jones has more rushing yards than Alvin Kamara. He has more rushing yards than Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, it's
and it's real fitting that, because Atlanta struggles with mobile quarterbacks. I mean, Jalen Hurts had a pretty good week. I mean, they didn't face one last week, but they've had a struggle with mobile quarterbacks for a while now. So that's definitely a good sleeper pick right there. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, and Evan Ingram is going to be back in the lineup this week, and we've seen Daniel Jones heavily target Evan Ingram when he's there. Sterling Shepard is finally out of the number one target role or number one receiver role in the eyes of defenses. Kenny Golladay is going to get that number one receiver looks in terms of double coverage, getting that number one cornerback play against him. And Sterling Shepard has just balled out, especially in a PPR over the first 2 weeks. I absolutely think that this is going to be one of the more higher scoring games of the week. All right, sleeper running backs. Who you got?
Sleeper running back, I'm going with Kenyon Drake. No Josh Jacobs down there for the Raiders. The only trouble is how much if he ends up splitting with Peyton Barber. But if in a PPR league, the way that Kenyon Drake can catch the ball out of the backfield, that's definitely a sleeper guy that I would look for. And then the Dolphins gives up, I think, roughly around maybe like 11 points PPR. The first 2 games so far, 2 running backs. So if you're in a PPR league and you need just someone that just think that's a sleeper, I believe that Kenyon Drake is that man for you.
Yeah, and my sleeper running back is going to be someone that's in a very similar situation. It's going to be Sony Michel. It looks like Darrell Henderson is going to be out for the Rams. We saw Michel get integrated into the offense more in week 2 than he was in week 1. So this is, and again, they are playing Tampa, and the nostalgia of this Tampa Bay defense is still in a lot of people's minds. So a lot of people may be afraid to play Sony Michel. I think first of all, there isn't anybody else that I'm afraid of taking touches away from Sony Michel during this game. I think Sony Michel we're going to see 20 plus opportunities for him to touch the ball. And I do think that the Rams will integrate him into the passing game more than the Patriots had in the past. So I really do like Sony Michel, and I'm going to give a sleeper DFS play this week. And I was so shocked that I forget what he was on FanDuel, but he was only 4,900 on DraftKings, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's outside the top 25 in terms of pricing on DraftKings, and to be honest, I'm not surprised, but because of the lack of production, and we saw that critical fumble at the end of the Ravens game that allowed the Ravens to ice it out. But I think that this is a week that we see Clyde Edwards-Helaire get integrated into the passing game more. They just haven't done it for some reason. Don't know why we haven't seen. And Andy Reid has always done a tremendous job of getting his running backs integrated in the passing game. I think we see more of that this week from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think we see less of guys like Byron Pringle or Denard Robinson that we've seen over the past few weeks. So to me, he's a tournament play on DraftKings.
Yeah, I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire too. I mean the fumble last week doesn't bother me. I mean, it just happens. Life as a young running back, but I think this week they definitely wish. I don't know. I'm right there with you. I don't know why they haven't implemented him more in the passing game, because I think that's what got him his stock to rise up when he was at LSU was how well he was catching out of the backfield, and the fact that he fell into their laps at the end of that first round. last season. I don't understand why they're not using him that much, but I think today Andy Reid is going to go ahead and make sure that they continue to try to use Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit more, because I definitely have him in a couple of my fantasy leagues.
Yeah, and he was almost hand-selected by Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes was the one who said, go and get me Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So you got to figure that he's going to, at some point, get it going. If not, I mean, who else do they have?
Right.
I know they have Darren Williams, but he's a career backup, has never been able to make an impact wherever he's been. I just don't see them having another option unless they go out on the waiver wire and pick up someone like an Adrian Peterson, someone like a Todd Gurley, who are just sitting there waiting to be had. It's amazing that, and that tells you just exactly where the NFL is on these guys. The fact that other guys like Kerryon Johnson is getting picked up by the 49ers and not someone like an Adrian Peterson or Todd Gurley.
Right.
All right. Let's get into our sleeper wide receivers. Who you got?
My sleeper wide receiver, I'm going to go with Tyler Boyd.
Man, we are on the same page.
Hey, man, Steelers right now banged up on defense. I don't believe TJ Watt is playing today.
TJ Watt was placed on IR, so he will be missing 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's out. I want to say is Devin Bush is dealing with an injury.
He is playing, but he's not 100%.
Yeah. And then the fact that there's no T. Higgins this week for Cincinnati, yep. I can definitely see Tyler Boyd getting even more targets and possibly catches this week, especially if he lines up in the slot, which Pittsburgh has kind of struggled so far. I know it's just 2 games in, but they kind of struggled so far against slot receivers. Hunter Renfrow had a pretty decent game against them. Cole Beasley had a nice game in opening week against them. So if Tyler Boyd is in that slot position, which they probably will keep him there, even though there is no T. Higgins, just because of how well he excels there. I'm liking Tyler Boyd as a nice sleeper pick this week.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd was going to be my guy too. I actually like Jamar Chase as well. I think we're going to see the imprint of the void left by TJ Watt. He is such a key cog in that pass rush that what he does determines what the offensive line does, which in turn it affects how the cornerbacks, they get to be a little bit more aggressive because the quarterbacks aren't always going to have as much time. I think that this is going to be a week that the Steelers the Bengals may be able to expose some of those holes in the Pittsburgh defense this week. I'm going to go with Rondelle Moore out of Arizona. I would love to see his snap percentage get above 50. He was in the high 30s week 1, in the high 40s week 2. So I do see a positive trend, but when he's out there, he's effective.
Yeah.
And he gets to go against Jacksonville's defense. Deandre Hopkins, it looks like he is going to play, but he is not 100%. So again, this right now, this is a speculative play because I do think that there's a chance that DeAndre Hopkins is just he's going to be he's going to take the attention from the defense and allow other players to get involved in this week. I absolutely love what Rondelle Moore, how he fits into that Arizona offense. I think Christian Kirk can have a good week as well, but I think we're going to see Rondelle Moore integrated ahead of someone like an AJ Green in this offense. I think he just fits the system better. All right, let's close out our sleepers with our sleeper tight end of the week.
It's kind of hard sometimes, man, trying to
Right.
find that guy because tight ends is very limited. But I would probably say right now, a sleeper that I would possibly go with, especially if you're like in a deeper league, he could probably be like a low end starter guy for you. I'm gonna go with Austin Hooper, just because of the lack of weapons right now that's out there for Cleveland. He should probably get a lot more targets and catches for sure. Now, granted, I mean, obviously, it's not just Hooper. There's David Njoku there as well. But I think out of that tight end room that they have, I trust Hooper a lot more. Probably has the highest ceiling out of all of the guys that tight end as well, between him and Njoku and Harrison Bryant. So I'll probably go with Hooper as a sleeper, just to get those targets, especially if they get down in the red zone and if they crowd the box and try to stop that run. If the Bears try to crowd the box and stop the run against Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they can quick play action pop pass right there to Hooper and could possibly get you just enough fantasy points that you need to get over the hump in a deep fantasy league.
Yeah, and especially on DFS, he's I think on DraftKings he's only sitting there at like 3,600. I do think that Austin Hooper in a PPR setting is a pretty good option this week. My sleeper tight end is gonna match up with my one of my quarterbacks, and that's gonna be Evan Ingram. I don't think the Giants are going to send him out with the amount of issues that he's had with staying healthy, especially throughout this training camp. I don't think Evan Ingram's going out there unless he is 100%. Daniel Jones has shown trust in Evan Ingram, even when nobody else in the world can trust Evan Ingram. He's dropped the ball just way too often, but that, like I said, that still has not wavered Daniel Jones' trust in getting him the ball. I do think this is going to be a high-scoring game, and Evan Ingram is a red zone threat. I think outside of Kenny Golladay, he would be the top red zone threat the Giants would have this week. So if I'm looking to spend down at the position, I would be looking at Evan Ingram. But, of course, my favorite play in DFS this week, I would be spending up on Darren Waller. The Dolphins have two of the better cornerbacks in the league. They are not great against the tight end. So DFS, like I said, if I'm spending up, it's going to be Waller. If I'm spending down, it's going to be Evan Ingram.
Yeah, Ingram is pretty good right there, definitely for DFS. And Atlanta has been terrible for tight ends for the longest. I mean, Goddard had a pretty good game. It looked like it was 2010, 2011 last week with Gronk and Brady. So it's definitely there.
I heard a stat earlier this week that there's only been 4 times that a tight end has had 4 touchdowns through 2 games. 2 of those times are Rob Gronkowski. One of the other, I think it was Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez. So, I mean, it's those elite guys that get it done. And Gronk is the perfect standard league tight end because he's not going to get more than 5 targets a game, but he gets those important ones in the red zone. And he's one of those guys that, I mean, Rob Gronkowski has turned into one of the best blocking tight ends in the history of the game, which is amazing because when he was coming out of Arizona, that was one of his weaknesses. But he got under Bill Belichick, which I think was the most important thing for Rob Gronkowski. I think if he goes anywhere else and doesn't get the tutelage from someone like that and get to play with someone like a Tom Brady, who
Right.
he just fits in perfectly with. There was an interview with Gronkowski, and they asked him about the film, like what kind of film he watches, and his response was the most Gronk response of all time. It was, "I don't watch film. I let Tom watch the film, and he tells me what to do." Which
Hey,
I
I
highly
appreciate your
doubt.
honesty.
I highly doubt. I think that that's just him trying to play up for the media, because Rob Gronkowski's NFL IQ is so high, and a lot of that comes from the tutelage of the Belichick system, but you could see it in his blocking. You don't become that good of a blocker over the course of your NFL career, because it didn't start in college. It started in the NFL. You don't become going from a liability as a blocker to becoming one of the best blocking tight ends of all time by letting other people watch film for you. You're doing that on your own. And as much as a lot of people want to hate on him because of the ties with the Patriots, and the Patriots are one of those teams where usually if you don't love them, you hate them.
Right.
Rob Gronkowski is one of those guys that is perfect. He is so great for the NFL because, one, he keeps himself clean. You've never heard of any sort of rap sheet behind a Rob Gronkowski other than he likes to go out and have fun. I mean, that's all what Rob Gronkowski has been about. But two, one of the things that I absolutely love about Rob Gronkowski is the story that he has not touched any of his game checks. His game checks have all gone into savings. What he spends his signing bonuses, and he spends his endorsement money. That's what he's set up for life, and including him, his kids, his grandkids. He is so smart when it comes to something like this, that I think he could become one of those. And I know that he'll be in the media when he retires, because the media needs Rob Gronkowski to be in it. He would be. He's going to be amazing. So he's become one of my favorite players to cheer for. So that's going to do it for this week. We will do this again next week. Again, if you have any questions, feel free, send them our way. You can send them to my Twitter, which is at rstern33. Marthony is at @IM_M_Sanders_. Or you can send them over to Backsports Page, which is at Backsports Page, anywhere you go on social media. And make sure you're checking out backsportspage.com for all the great football content going up there. So, Marthony, enjoy. I hope you don't enjoy this week. I love saying enjoy this week, but this week we're going against
we can't do it right. We can't do it.
Giants Falcons. So I hope you suffer this week. All right, my friend. We'll do this again next week.
All right.
Be well.